Hi everyone, it's Erin again, here to read Chapter 2 from Spirit of the Dragon. If you don't have the book already, you can pick it up for free at most online stores, and the paperback is now available on Amazon. Let's get started. Chapter 2, Hidekazu. Goosebumps tingled along Hidekazu's arms with the cold touch of ki. A wrongness laced the energy, an unusual sensation he couldn't identify. His head spun as he struggled to keep up with Aihi, Masanori, and Tora as they wove between cut-leaf maples and trampled through patches of maidenhair. "Guards!" Tora shouted, but there wasn't anyone else nearby. Purple flashed behind a line of cedars. The energy's immense pressure left Hidekazu sluggish, compounding the effort needed for each step. Could they stop someone with such power? He propelled himself forward despite the growing ache in his legs. "No!" A woman's muffled cry. Hidekazu tapped his breast. Silver, dazzling energy pulsed through his fingertips and into a rod concealed beneath his kimono. The knob expanded into a full-length staff of white elderwood, an orb of ki encasing a gleaming sapphire at its head. He broke through the trees after Tora, where Aihi and Masanori were already in front, their katanas pointed at a figure shrouded in darkness. A long staff, crowned with a bleeding eyeball, rested in the figure's hand. Purple ki extended from the weapon like a rope and wrapped around a young woman in a pink festival yukata and dragon mask. Ki vibrated around them in erratic waves, but the hues concerned Hidekazu. Purple ki existed only when someone corrupted the balance of natural elements. Yet this Maju wielded corrupted energy like any other, a clear violation of the goddess's gift. "Aihime," the figure said, his voice high-pitched and excited. Tendrils writhed and shook the woman midair. She shrieked. Aihi recoiled at the nickname. "Let her go, and I may still grant mercy." "We meet, but, oh, too soon," the figure said, but the Saiyadian words were unrefined on his tongue. He bowed, and a ram skull mask dipped out of the shadows, the creamy bone visible in the dull light. "A Kanthere," Hidekazu said. "We need backup." "Detain him! Quick!" Aihi pulled water from a nearby pond, funneling the liquid into translucent whips and lashing at the goatman. The spray hit an invisible barrier and exploded, sending water flying at Aihi and Masanori. Hidekazu slammed his staff into the kobold's path, ripping stones free and sending a patchwork mosaic to block the water. "Not today," the Kanthere said. The rocks under Hidekazu's command wavered as he fought over whether to remain in battle, which he wasn't trained for, or rushing to find help. The former won. He tried redirecting the earth under his control at the Kanthere, but he trembled as he drew Kigo. A straight line turned wobbly under his untrained hands, and directionless energy surged from Hidekazu's fingers. He stumbled with the force of the ki. Pebbles fell around him, clapping the ground like hail. Hidekazu's parents had kept him from training in combat his whole life, and in the heat of the moment, he didn't have the discipline to use proper Kigo. Worse, in the 10 years he'd studied as a Shugo, he never learned how to block corrupted energy. Even the shield he'd spent years perfecting could end up useless. The Kanthere thrust his staff forward, and blood splattered from the eye towards Tora. Water swirled around Aihi, catching the gore in translucent spirals. The crimson turned into brown muck on contact, eating the water like acid on wood. Hidekazu pushed his remaining energy into the river to sustain Aihi's ki. Spots danced across his vision as his power fought against the sludge, but corruption drove through the water with uncanny precision. Hidekazu gasped as his control snapped again. Great warlock, this Kanthere was formidable. Water crashed onto the garden path, glistening gold and red as fireworks popped overhead. Black cherry blossoms sprouted from the diluted blood and crept toward the Kanthere. The flower's faint inner glows dispelled the goat man's cloak of shadows as they wrapped around its hooves. On the other side of the Kanther's barrier, the trapped woman thrashed in her bonds, violet branches curling around her like malicious snakes. Unless Aihi and Tora destroyed the shield, they had no chance of saving her. Tora jumped over the flowers, Masanori right behind her, and lunged at the Kanther. The blades pinged against the invisible barrier, but they recovered and continued hacking and jabbing. Sparks solidified around Tora's naginata and ricocheted across the shield to no effect. The Kanther watched, as if amused. Not today, little Genshu's, little princess, little Benri. Not when we have just met, he said. Hidekazu's confusion muddied his fervent desire to capture the Kanther. He'd never met a Kanther in his life, yet this one knew them. Aihi drew the Kigo for earth with her katana, and nearby bamboo stalks lashed at the shield, only to disintegrate on contact. We will meet again soon, yes, and the fun will begin, the Kanther said, cackling. He bowed again, and the black flowers lunged, swallowing him and his prisoner whole. The Kanther's barrier shattered as Aihi's sword cleaved through the remaining energy. Silver dusted the air as she landed where the Kanther had been. She spun, eyes wide, her arms shaking. Hidekazu scanned the trees, finding no trace of the Kanther or his strange key. Aihi's frantic gaze met Hidekazu's, and the adrenaline from the battle began to ebb away. Staring at her sweat-slicked face, he could only think of the future his father had decided for them. He closed his eyes. Aihi was practically his sister. Where are the guards? Masanori said. Why was a Kanther here? Aihi said. Hidekazu wondered the same thing. Kanther were a race of goat people who lived beyond the Eastern Sea, on a collection of islands called Yautlan. When visiting Shimensoka, they preferred the vast deserts of Tajida. In the infrequent instances where Kanther crossed the entire continent and came to Seiryu, they often caused trouble. Fireworks continued to crackle overhead, spraying the night's canvas with more gold light. Dragons and kitsune danced in the starry sky until they lost their key and disappeared. Everyone's watching the show, Hidekazu said. Tora slipped off her howdy and draped the coat over Aihi's shoulders. We must warn Captain Todoroki of the attack, she said. You're hurt, Aihi said. She took Tora's hands into hers, and when held up, moonlight glistened on a scarlet gash. Healer first, then Todoroki. They rushed to the infirmary, but as Hidekazu's mind wound down from the fight, the deeper his worry became. How did the Kanther know them? The fireworks ceased by the time the group left Tora with the healers, and Hidekazu, Masanori, and Aihi navigated the city by starlight and the glow of festivities. Do all Kanther use corrupted ki? Masanori said. No, Aihi said. Few circumstances should consider corrupted ki normal. Hidekazu shivered. He wielded distorted energy like a weapon. What about the skull mask? Is it the mark of a dark sorcerer? Masanori said. It means nothing. Kanther are... Their custom is to wear the skulls of their ancestors. I know little else. Creepy, Masanori said. People danced in the streets to the thrum of festival drums, the courtyard vibrating with the movements of their feet. Jugglers and performers waded through the throes of merriment, all oblivious to the attack. The crowds dwindled as Masanori, Hidekazu, and Aihi traveled further from the Crimson Gardens, and sing-song laughter and cheering faded into the distance. The Tsukiko Barracks was a complex of 3 interconnected buildings around a simple square. An old bamboo fence obscured the yard where 2 large braziers illuminated a modest statue of the goddess Shirishi, her human form draped in dragon scales. Aihi slid open the door into an entranceway of tatami and rice paper. No decorations hung on the walls. save a single crescent moon, the emblem of the Tsukiko Guard. Exalted Dragon Princess. A woman in an elegant black and white kimono fell to her knees and touched her head to the floor the instant she noticed Aihi. I did not know. Aihi ignored the attendant and navigated the building with ease only gained from familiarity, and Hidekazu and Masanori rushed to keep up. At the end of a short hallway, a translucent barrier pinged at Aihi's touch and prevented her from opening another latticed door. She turned as the attendant appeared behind them, bowing deeply. Captain Todoroki is out, Your Exaltation, she said. Find him, Aihi said. We witnessed a kidnapping, and Todoroki will spare a minute from the festivities not for my sake, but for hers. Todoroki is... Please accept my sincerest apologies, Your Exaltation. Captain Todoroki is not in Tsukiko at all. You're certain? Where did he go? Aihi said, sounding shocked. He left this morning, but I am not privy to the details of his travels. The woman prostrated herself before Aihi. I know nothing. I swear on the goddess' love. She was tiny in Aihi's commanding presence, but no liar would dare invoke the goddess to prove their word. If Aihi enforced the declaration and the attendant proved untruthful, the goddess's wrath would strike her from the heavens. Hidekazu had witnessed such judgments before. Once at court, when a noble dared to lie to the emperor. The other after Hidekazu's mother took her role as high priestess of Shirishi's grand temple. Little but ash and ozone lingered in the aftermath. The evocation was excessive. Liar or not, the woman would be no use to them dead. I believe you, Aihi said after a long moment. If Captain Todoroki is absent, you will declare an emergency on my behalf. She snapped her fingers, and paper and a brush appeared in her hands. Have the guard on full alert. Scour every inch of the city for Kanthir. The woman looked up, her brow creased at the mention of the goatman. With a couple of quick strokes, Aihi handed the parchment to the attendant. The woman bowed her head again and received the papers. Consider it done, Your Exaltation. Aihi swept past the woman. Upon guard Captain Todoroki's return, inform him on my behalf that I expect an excellent explanation for his absence tonight. Outside on the veranda, Aihi, Hidekazu, and Masanori witnessed a final round of dragon-shaped fireworks loop through the night sky, sparklers whizzing below them in a wave of violet stars. At the barracks' front gate, Tora's silhouette waded toward them in the moonlight. No good news? Tora said, a bandage wrapped around her arm where she'd been cut. Aihi sighed. Todoroki is not here. We must visit Governor Benlini. Tora's mother governed over Tsukiko in the emperor's stead, and often provided protection to supplement the city guard. The Benlis had only been elevated into the emperor's esteem 8 years ago, so their personal forces were still limited, but having them on patrol would be an asset in catching the Kanthir. They needed everyone searching. Of all the years Hidekazu studied the inner workings of Ki, he'd never heard of so much corrupted energy used at once. He shuddered at the memory of purple flashes. Before we visit my mother, Tora said, there is something I must tell you. Since your last visit to Tsukiko, other noble ladies have been acting strange. Not responding to correspondence as frequently, not attending festivals. How does this have anything to do with Kanthir? Tora, is this the time? Tora flinched. I tried telling my mother. I think she knows. I still fail to understand the connection. The Kanthir took... Hidekazu stopped himself with a sharp intake of crisp night air. You believe the Kanthir has struck before? Why didn't you tell us sooner? Masanori said. Tora bowed low. I insisted we attend the festival tonight because of my suspicions. When I tried informing my mother, she made me swear a vow of secrecy, Aihi finished for Tora. Despite the bitterness spiking Aihi's words, she remained otherwise composed. Your mother's actions are dishonorable. Did she send Captain Todoroki from the city as well? She told me we could not request assistance due to the complications in Nagaso, Tora said. As questionable as her decision may be, she would never risk the city further by sending Captain Todoroki away. He must have left on his own accord. What's happening in Nagaso? Hidekazu said. He and Masanori lived in Nagaso, but this was the first time he'd heard of any potential problems. Tora glanced at Aihi, who pursed her lips. Where would Todoroki go? She said. It doesn't matter. The guard isn't going to find anything, Masanori said. The Kanthere is long gone. Regardless, I must speak to Governor Bentley on this matter. Let me warn her first, Tora said. She will prove less resistant if she is aware of her position before seeing you, ne? There is no time. We must pursue the Kanthere without hesitation. A woman's life might be in danger, Aihi said. It's late, Aihi, Hidekazu said, and we cannot help her with no information or support. Someone dropped from the barracks roof, landing on one knee in front of Aihi and falling into a bow. Aihi and Masanori grabbed their swords, and Tora her naginata, but they stopped when the figure remained on the floor, head against the veranda. Exalted Dragon Princess, the woman said. State your purpose, Aihi demanded. A lacquered fox mask hid the woman's face, and she wore unremarkable festival wear, a black yukata with golden butterflies. As Captain Todoroki is absent from the city, I'm Headmaster Meki of the Tsukiko Academy and revered Meki family, hopes you will meet him regarding the woman who disappeared this night. You observed the attack, but didn't provide aid, Masanori said. Much like you, my capacity to raise arms against such a foe remains limited. Tsukiko Academy. Headmaster Meki Barame. Hidekazu sucked in a breath. The Meki family was once a line of the greatest warlocks, dragon-blooded Maju and Seiryu, although all the warlocks had died suddenly almost 50 years ago, and Barame was the only survivor of his family. He never manifested any warlock ki. Regardless, he earned his fame during his service as a form of Bushi. The Bushi were an elite class of warriors sworn to defend the royal family, often masters of various forms of ki and weapons, and unmatched in battle. Most Maju didn't qualify for the status of Bushi, and the deadly examinations scared away all but the bravest from trying. As such, Meki Barame devised the exclusive Tsukiko Academy to simplify the process and educate future generations of Bushi. Meki Barame, Aihi said. How could he possibly be of use to us? Tora nudged Aihi. Meki Barame is the most powerful man in the city, she said. I hadn't thought about asking him. The most influential man. Tora's mother held the top spot. He has information, the woman said. I have no desire to see him, not when I have yet to meet Governor Bentley, Aihi said. We should entertain the headmaster's request, Hidekazu said. Tora can prepare her mother in the meantime. He wanted to meet the famous ex-Bushi for his own reasons, but also because he and Masanori were not experienced warriors and had few prospects of pursuing the Kanthere without the support of the city's officials. With Captain Todoroki missing and Governor Bentley on hold, that left rallying Barame as their only choice. Aihi caressed the hilt of her katana. Very well. Tora, ready your mother for an audience tomorrow afternoon. Her gaze settled on the woman with the fox mask. Take us to Headmaster Meki. He wishes you to visit him at the academy in the morning. In the morning, Aihi said, seething. This is not time for Barame to play games. A woman was kidnapped. Every second skews the odds between life and death. I am the exalted dragon princess of Seiryu, and Meki Barame holds no power over me any longer. He will attend to me or suffer the consequences. Crickets chirped from the bushes around the Tsukiko barracks, singing in the absence of fireworks and festival songs. I am sure Headmaster Meki can accommodate your selected schedule, the woman said after a while. That is what I thought, Aihi said. I will visit my mother at once and find you when she is sufficiently prepared. Tora dismissed herself, disappearing down the moonlit street. Aihi's glare returned to the woman at her feet. Well, what are you waiting for? Bring us to Meki Barame. And that concludes Chapter 2. I'll see you again next week for Chapter 3.